The night my husband moved his mistress into my house. She was standing in my bedroom with my robe on. Not a guest robe. Mine. She looked at me like I had walked into the wrong place. Bennett stood beside her with his arms folded, calm as stone, and said, "Claire, don't make this ugly. This house is basically mine now." I remember looking past him at my own dresser, my own curtains, my own wedding photo turned face down on the nightstand. My hands were shaking, but I did not scream. I did not throw anything. I took one breath, stepped into the hallway, and called the only person I trusted to tell me the truth without softening it. My lawyer, Mara Devlin, listened quietly. Then she asked one question. "Claire, where is the deed?" That was the first time Bennett's face changed. He had been smug when I found Sloane in my room. He had been cruel when he told me I should leave before I embarrassed myself. But when he heard Mara ask for the deed, his jaw tightened. "You don't need a lawyer for old paperwork," he said quickly. "Marriage changes things." Mara heard him through the phone. Her voice stayed calm. "Do not sign anything. Do not leave the house tonight. Find the deed." That was when I understood something was wrong in a way I had not been able to name yet. This was not just an affair. This was not just my husband replacing me with another woman under my own roof. The deed scared him, and if a piece of paper scared him that much, then it held more power than he wanted me to know. If you have ever watched someone act like they owned your life, tell me where you are listening from and what time it is there, because stories like this need witnesses. And if you want to hear how the truth came out piece by piece, please subscribe when you are ready and stay with me. Because when I finally opened the old blue folder where the deed was kept, I found my name exactly where Bennett said it would not matter. And that was only the first clue. I pulled the blue folder down with both hands because I did not trust myself to hold it with one. The paper inside was not dramatic. It did not glow. It did not shout the truth for me. It was just a deed, folded into a clear sleeve, with my name printed on the front in plain black letters. Claire Whitaker. Not Bennett and Claire Whitaker. Not Bennett Whitaker. Just me. For a few seconds, I could not move. I had spent the last hour standing in my own hallway while another woman breathed my air from my bedroom. And my husband acted like I was the guest. But this paper said something different. It said the house had a memory older than his lies. I sent Mara a photo of the deed. Then I placed the original on the kitchen table and set my phone beside it. My hands were still shaking, but I made myself breathe slowly. I did not want Bennett to see me break. I wanted him to see me reading. He came into the kitchen before Mara even called back. Sloane stayed behind him, half hidden near the hallway, still wearing my robe like it was a crown. Bennett looked at the folder, then at me. "What are you doing?" he asked. "Looking at old paperwork," I said. His face tightened. "That deed does not mean what you think it means." That was when I knew the deed meant exactly what I thought it meant. Mara called back a minute later. I put her on speaker before Bennett could tell me not to. "Claire," she said, "the deed you sent shows you as the owner of record. That is the first thing, not the last thing. I still need the title history." Bennett let out a sharp laugh, but it sounded wrong. Too fast. Too loud. "Marriage changes property," he said. "Tell her that." Mara did not raise her voice. "Marriage does not make a deed disappear." The room went silent. For the first time that night, Sloane looked away from me. I looked down at the folder again. Behind the deed, there were old envelopes I had barely noticed before. 2 were from the title company. One had a yellow forwarding sticker on it. Another had Bennett's handwriting across the corner. Routine house mail. I handle it. I remembered him saying that so many times. Bills, insurance, tax notices, bank letters. He always made it sound like love, like he was protecting me from stress. But now that sentence felt like a locked door. I slid the envelopes out and took pictures of each one. Bennett stepped closer. "You are making this worse," he said. "No," I said, keeping my voice low. I am making a record. That one sentence changed the air between us. He was still standing in my kitchen. Sloane was still in my hallway. My marriage was still breaking in front of me. But the deed had answered one question. The house was not his just because he said it was. The deeper question was worse. If Bennett knew my name was on that deed, why had he spent so long acting like I would never check? And why had I trusted him with every envelope that came to this house before the night he tried to take it from me? For years, the house had been the one thing in my life that felt steady. I bought it before I married Bennett. It was not huge or fancy, but it was mine in the way a safe place becomes yours. I knew which window stuck when it rained. I knew which floorboard creaked outside the kitchen. I knew the small cabinet beside the laundry room held the papers I was always afraid to lose. That was where the blue folder had always been. It sat on the top shelf with tax papers, insurance forms, old repair receipts, and the first set of house keys I never threw away. When I bought the house, the closing papers felt too important to touch. So I put the deed in that folder, slid it behind the insurance file, and told myself I would always know where it was. Then I married Bennett, and little by little, he became the one who handled things. At first, it felt kind. He paid bills before I remembered them. He opened mail and placed sticky notes on what needed my attention. He called the insurance company when the roof leaked. He spoke to the bank when a payment question came up. I thought that was partnership. I did not notice how often the papers passed through his hands before they reached mine. Sometimes I would see an envelope from a title company or a property office on the counter, and he would pick it up before I could ask. Routine house mail, he would say, I handle it. He said it gently enough that I heard love instead of control. That was the part that hurt most while I sat at the kitchen table with the deed open in front of me. Bennett had not taken the house from me in one loud moment. He had trained me slowly to look away from the very papers that protected me. I remembered one night, months earlier, when he had asked where the blue folder was. I had been making dinner. He had leaned against the laundry room door and said he needed to check insurance wording. I told him the folder was in the cabinet, top shelf, same place as always. He smiled and said, Good. I just like knowing where things are. Back then, that sentence meant nothing. Now, it made my stomach turn, because Bennett had not acted surprised when I found the deed. He had acted scared. And if he had known where the folder was, if he had touched those envelopes, if he had seen my name on that deed, then his lie in the bedroom was not a mistake. It was practice. From the hallway, I heard Sloane whisper something to him. I could not make out every word, but I heard one sentence clearly. She wasn't supposed to look tonight. I kept my eyes on the deed, but my chest went cold. That meant there had been a plan before I walked in. And to understand how far back it started, I had to look at every small moment I had once called ordinary. That sentence stayed in my head like a nail. She wasn't supposed to look tonight. Not, she is overreacting. Not, she misunderstood. Not even. Bennett told me this was handled. Sloane had said I was not supposed to look. I sat at the kitchen table with the deed open in front of me and tried to replay the last year without lying to myself. That was harder than I expected. Some memories came back soft at first, like they still wanted to protect him. Bennett standing at the counter with mail in his hand. Bennett asking where I kept my old closing papers. Bennett laughing when I said I did not understand title language. Bennett telling me, that is why you have me. At the time, those moments had felt small. A husband helping, a husband handling details, a husband making life easier. Now, they looked like practice. I remembered one Saturday morning when I found a thick envelope near his laptop. It had the title company's name in the corner. I picked it up because it looked official, but Bennett took it from my hand before I could open it. Nothing important, he said. They always send copies. Then he kissed my forehead. That kiss hurt more in my memory than any shout could have, because I remembered how quickly I had believed him. I remembered smiling, going back to my coffee, and letting him put the envelope in his office drawer. Another memory followed it. A month after that, Bennett asked me if I had ever thought about using the house more wisely. He said we were sitting on value. He said married people should think as a team. When I asked what he meant, he shrugged and said, maybe a refinance someday. Maybe a rental plan if we ever moved. I told him I did not want strangers in my house. He smiled like I was being sweet and simple. You get too attached to things, Claire. That sentence had bothered me then, but I pushed it away. I told myself he was just talking about money. I told myself couples had those talks. Now, with Sloane in my hallway and my robe still on her body, I understood he had not been talking about the future. He had been testing what I would resist. I looked at the old envelopes again. One had been opened cleanly along the side. Another had a date from 3 months ago. The newest one had Bennett's writing across the corner. Routine house mail. I handle it. I took pictures of each envelope. Then I wrote the dates down on the back of an old grocery receipt because it was the first paper I could find. Mara had told me not to sign anything and not to leave. She had not told me to build a timeline yet, but my hands were already doing it. Bennett watched me from the edge of the kitchen. You are acting crazy, he said. I looked up at him then. His voice was sharp, but his eyes kept moving to the envelopes. That was the second clue. He was not afraid of the deed alone. He was afraid of what the old mail would prove once someone put it in order. And suddenly, every small red flag had a date. Every small red flag had a date. That thought scared me more than Bennett's voice did. Because if the dates mattered, then this was not a fight that had started tonight. It had been building quietly in drawers, envelopes, emails, and papers I had trusted him to handle. I pulled one of the kitchen chairs closer to the table and made myself sort everything into piles. The deed went in the first pile. The title company envelopes went in the second. Old insurance papers went in the third. Anything with Bennett's handwriting went in the fourth. My phone stayed open beside me, camera ready, because I did not know what he might try to take once he realized I was not just crying anymore. Bennett stood near the doorway, watching every move. You do not even understand what you are looking at, he said. I did not answer. I took a picture of the first envelope, then the second. I zoomed in on the dates. I took a picture of his handwriting across the corner. Routine house mail. I handle it. The words looked worse through the camera. Clearer, smaller, and colder. Sloane shifted behind him. I heard the soft sound of my slippers on her feet. That almost broke me. Not the robe, not the bedroom, the slippers. Something about that small sound made her feel settled in a way that made my stomach twist. But I kept taking pictures. Mara texted me while I was sorting. Photograph everything before you move it. Keep originals together. Do not argue. Do not sign. Do not leave. I read the message twice. Then I placed the blue folder on top of the deed and slid both closer to my side of the table. Bennett noticed. Claire, he said, softer now. You are making this bigger than it has to be. That tone almost worked on me. It was the voice he used after arguments when he wanted me to believe the worst part was over. But Sloane was still standing in my hallway wearing my things, and the deed was still on my table. No, I said. I am keeping track. His face hardened. You want to keep track? He said. Then write down that you are refusing to act like a wife. I looked at him, then really looked at him. For years, I had thought a wife was supposed to trust, to share, to let her husband handle what he said he could handle. But that night, sitting across from the man who had moved another woman into my bedroom, I understood something simple. Trust without truth was just a blindfold. So I started a list. 1. Deed in my name only. 2. Title company envelope opened before I saw it. 3. Bennett's handwriting on property mail. 4. Sloane knew I was not supposed to look tonight. 5. Bennett said marriage changed the deed. When I wrote that fifth line, his hand moved toward the table. I moved faster. I picked up the folder and held it against my chest. The look he gave me was not the look of a husband who thought I was confused. It was the look of a man watching a locked door open from the wrong side. That was when I saw one more thing inside the folder. A thin receipt from a courier service, folded behind the insurance papers. I had not put it there. It had Bennett's name on it, and beside the delivery line were 3 words that made Mara's next call feel suddenly urgent. Title packet, returned. Title packet, returned. I read those 3 words so many times they stopped looking real. The courier receipt was thin and faded, but the ink was clear enough. Bennett's name was printed near the top. The delivery date was from 3 months earlier. The return line had the title company's address on it. I took a picture of the receipt and sent it to Mara. For the first time that night, she did not call back right away. That scared me. Bennett saw my face change and tried to step closer. I moved the blue folder farther from him. "What is that?" he asked. "You tell me." His eyes dropped to the receipt. For one quick second, his face went empty. Not angry, not smug, empty. Then he laughed. "That is nothing," he said. "Old business paperwork." Sloane spoke from the hallway. "Bennett." It was only his name, but it sounded like a warning. Mara called then, and I answered before either of them could say more. "Claire," she said, "listen to me carefully. Do not call the title company yourself tonight. Do not accuse anyone. Do not argue with him about what this means." My throat tightened. "Then what do I do?" "You keep the papers safe," she said, "and you let me request the title history the proper way." Bennett scoffed loud enough for her to hear. "Proper way? This is my marriage, not a court case." Mara's voice stayed calm. "Then you should have no problem with the records." The room went quiet again. I looked at Bennett. He looked at the folder. That was when Mara explained it in simple words. A deed showed who owned the house. A title history showed what people had tried to do with that ownership. If someone had sent in a packet about the house, there should be a record of it. If it had been rejected or returned, there might be a reason. A reason meant a paper trail. A paper trail meant Bennett's words were no longer the only story in the room. Mara asked me to read the receipt number out loud. My voice shook on the first few digits, so I stopped, breathed in, and started again. Bennett moved toward me. "Stop performing," he snapped. I looked at him over the phone. "I am reading." His jaw clenched. Mara said she would contact the title office in the morning and ask for certified records. She also said she knew someone there named Renee Ortiz, a records contact who could confirm whether anything had been submitted, returned, or rejected. "Is the deed enough?" I asked. "It is enough to protect the first truth," Mara said. "But this receipt may explain the lie behind it." That sentence landed harder than I expected. The deed told me the house was mine. The receipt suggested Bennett had already tried to make it into something else. When the call ended, I gathered the deed, the envelopes, the receipt, and my handwritten timeline into one stack. I slid them back into the blue folder and held it against me like it was breakable. Bennett watched me for a long moment. Then his whole face changed. The anger left first, then the sharp voice, then the cold stare. He looked almost hurt. "Claire," he said softly, "can we please talk alone?" And that frightened me more than his yelling had. "Can we please talk alone?" Bennett said it like he was asking for peace, but his eyes were still on the blue folder. That was how I knew the apology had not come from his heart. It had come from fear. Sloane shifted in the hallway. "Bennett, maybe this is not the time." He turned his head just enough to silence her, without saying a word. Then he looked back at me. Claire, he said softly, I know tonight looks bad. I almost laughed. Looks bad. His mistress was in my robe. My deed was on the kitchen table. A courier receipt said a title packet had been returned, and he wanted to call it a bad look. I kept my hands on the folder. It does not look bad, Bennett. It is bad. His face tightened, but he forced it smooth again. I made mistakes, he said. I got overwhelmed. Things with the house, money, business plans. I should have talked to you before it got this far. Before it got this far. Not before I lied. Not before I moved another woman into your bedroom. Not before I tried to use your house. Just before it got this far. He pulled out the chair across from me and sat down slowly, like any sudden move might scare me away. Then he reached into the inside pocket of his jacket. My body went cold. He placed a folded paper on the table. I need you to look at this, he said. It is not what you think. It just says we are handling the house together until things calm down. I did not touch it. The top line said temporary property understanding. The words were simple enough, but the feeling behind them was not. My eyes moved down the page. Shared use, temporary consent, business review, occupancy arrangement. Then I saw one line that made my fingers tighten around the folder. Spouse acknowledges future property use discussion. It sounded harmless if you read it fast. That was the trap. Bennett always knew how to make a dangerous thing look reasonable. Sign it tonight, he said. Then nobody has to get embarrassed. Not you, not me, not Sloane. There it was. The apology had teeth. I looked at Sloane. She was standing very still now. Too still. Like she had seen this paper before. Bennett leaned forward. You are upset. I understand that. But if you drag lawyers into this, you will make everything harder. I picked up my phone and took a picture of the paper. His hand shot across the table. Claire. I pulled the phone back before he could reach it. No, I said. Mara told me not to sign anything. She did not say I could not photograph what you put in front of me. His mouth opened, then closed. For the first time, he had no quick answer. That scared me and strengthened me at the same time, because the deed had told me the house was still mine. The receipt had told me something had been returned. But this paper told me Bennett was still trying to get my consent after the fact. He had not come to apologize. He had come to fix the mistake he made when I found the deed too soon. I sent the photo to Mara with one message. He wants me to sign this tonight. Her reply came less than a minute later. Do not sign. Keep that paper if you can. Tomorrow we make the first official move. Tomorrow we make the first official move. I read Mara's message until the words stopped shaking. For the rest of that night, I did not sleep. I stayed at the kitchen table with the blue folder beside my elbow and my phone face up. Bennett stayed in the living room for a while, speaking low to Sloane. I could not hear every word, but I heard enough. She is scared, he said once. I almost answered. I almost told him he was wrong. But the truth was, I was scared. I was scared of what he had done. I was scared of what I had missed. I was scared that my own home had become a place where every drawer could hold another lie. So I did what Mara told me. I did not argue. I did not sign. I did not leave. In the morning, Mara called me before 8. I am sending a formal request for the title history, she said. I am also sending written notice that you do not consent to any transfer, refinance, rental plan, occupancy agreement, or property use connected to that house. I sat up straighter. Can you do that? I can put your position in writing, she said. That matters. It stops him from pretending everyone is confused. That word hit me hard. Confused. Bennett had used confusion like a blanket. He wrapped every lie in it. He wanted me to feel confused about the deed, confused about the house, confused about Sloane, confused about what marriage gave him the right to do. Mara was putting one clear sentence in front of all that fog. Claire does not consent. When she emailed me a copy of the letter, I read it slowly. The words were simple, but they felt stronger than shouting. It listed the house address. It listed my name as the owner of record. It named the deed. It asked for certified title history. It asked whether any packet had been submitted, returned, rejected, or flagged. It stated that I had not approved any transfer or property use. I had never thought a letter could feel like a locked door. Bennett found out less than an hour later. He came into the kitchen holding his phone, his face pale with anger. "You had her send something?" he asked. I did not look away. "Mara sent a letter." "To who?" "The title office." His mouth opened, but no sound came out at first. Then Sloane appeared behind him, still dressed like she belonged there, but her confidence looked thinner than it had the night before. "The title office?" she asked. Bennett snapped. "Go upstairs." That was the first time I saw him speak to her, like she was a problem instead of a prize. My phone buzzed before either of them could say more. It was Mara. Renee Ortiz at the title office confirmed receipt. "She is pulling the file." There was a returned packet. I stared at the words. Returned packet. Not a rumor. Not a guess. Not old business paperwork. A file. Bennett saw my face and stepped toward me. "Claire, whatever she thinks she found, you need to understand something." I lifted my phone before he came closer. "No," I said. "Now the records get to explain." His eyes moved from my phone to the blue folder, then to Sloane. And in that one look, I understood the official strike had landed. Because Bennett was no longer trying to convince me the deed did not matter. He was trying to figure out how much the title office already knew. Bennett was trying to figure out how much the title office already knew. Sloane was trying to figure out how much I knew. That difference mattered. Bennett looked angry, but Sloane looked exposed. Her eyes kept moving from my phone to the blue folder, then back to Bennett like she was waiting for him to fix something he had promised was already handled. "Go upstairs," he said again. This time, she did not move. "No," she said. "You told me this was done." The room went still. Bennett turned slowly. "Not now." Sloane's face changed. For the first time since I found her in my bedroom, she did not look like a woman who had won. She looked like someone who had been promised a prize and had just seen the price tag. I stood behind the kitchen chair with my hand on the folder. "What was done?" I asked. Bennett looked at me. "Claire, do not start." But Sloane laughed once, sharp and bitter. "She was going to find out anyway," she said. "You said she had already agreed to leave." My skin went cold. "I never agreed to leave my house," I said. Sloane looked at me then, not with guilt, with anger. "Well, that is not what he told me." Bennett stepped between us. "Enough." But Sloane was not done. Her voice rose, and every word felt like another hand pulling a curtain back. "He said you were being difficult, but that the house would be free soon. He said I would help manage it once it was turned into a short-term rental. He said the investors liked the location. He said you were just emotional about letting go. Letting go of my house, my bedroom, my life." I looked at Bennett, waiting for him to deny it. He did not. He only said, "You are twisting it." Sloane pulled her phone from the pocket of my robe. Seeing her use my robe like clothing instead of theft made my chest burn. "You want twisting?" she said. "Read your own messages." She tapped her screen fast, then held it up. Bennett reached for it, but she stepped back. I saw only a few lines before she pulled it away, but I saw enough. "Once Claire signs, we move fast. You handle the guest setup. Your share comes after the first 3 months." My breath caught. Sloane had not moved into my house because she believed Bennett owned it. She had moved in because she expected to profit from pushing me out. My phone buzzed again. Another message, but this time it was not from Mara. It was from an unknown number. "This is Sloane. Since everyone wants records, here. Ask him why he promised me 30%. Under the message was a screenshot. It showed Bennett's name. It showed the house address. It showed the words management share after spouse exit. I did not reply. I took a screenshot of the screenshot. Then I forwarded it to Mara. Bennett watched me do it. You have no idea what you are starting, he said. I looked at Sloane, then at him. No, I said. I think I am finally seeing what you already started. Sloane's message answered one question. She had known enough to be part of the pressure, but it opened a worse one. If Bennett had promised her a share after my exit, then what exactly had he planned to show the investors before I ever agreed to leave? Management share after spouse exit. Those 5 words sat on my phone screen like they had been written in ice. I looked at Bennett first. Not Sloane. Not the robe. Not the stairs behind him that led to my bedroom. Him. What does spouse exit mean? I asked. He rubbed one hand over his mouth. It is business language. For my house. For a possible plan, he said. Nothing happened. Then why did Sloane have it? His eyes cut toward her. Because she does not know what she is talking about. Sloane laughed, but there was no humor in it. Do not do that. Do not make me look stupid now. Bennett turned on her. You sent her that. She deserved to see what you promised me. For 1 second, I saw the whole room change. Bennett had walked into that kitchen thinking he had 2 women under pressure. His wife and his mistress. The one he wanted to silence, and the one he thought he could control. But now Sloane had given me proof because she wanted to punish him too. I forwarded the screenshot to Mara and set my phone on the table. Then I looked at Bennett again. You told her I was leaving. He shook his head. I said you were emotional. I said we were discussing options. You told her she would get 30% after my exit. That was not final. The words came out too fast. Not fake. Not misunderstood. Not impossible. Not final. My heart pounded so hard I felt it in my throat, but my voice stayed low, so it was real. Bennett stared at me. Sloane stopped moving. Even the house felt quiet. Then Bennett leaned forward, palms on the table. Claire, you are twisting this because you are hurt. You never cared about the business side of anything. You never wanted to understand money. I was trying to build something. With my home. With our future. There is no our future with her in my robe. His face darkened. For the first time that night, I did not step back from it. I picked up the blue folder and placed the deed beside the screenshot on my phone. Paper and screen. Old proof and new proof. My name on one. His promise to Sloane on the other. Tell me where I agreed, I said. Bennett said nothing. Show me the message where I said I would leave. Nothing. Show me the paper where I signed. His jaw moved, but no words came out. That silence answered more than his lies had. Sloane looked at him like she had never seen him clearly before. You said she was already on board. Bennett snapped. I said I was handling it. Handling it. There it was again. The word he had used for bills, mail, title notices, insurance forms, and now me. I took a picture of the deed beside the screenshot. Then I opened my notes and added another line to the timeline. Bennett admitted the plan was not final. Mara called before I could save it. I saw the screenshot. She said, do not argue anymore tonight. The next thing we need is the timeline. When did he promise her the share? And when did the title packet come back? I looked at the courier receipt, then at the screenshot, then at Bennett. For the first time, the dates felt like they were closing around him. Because if the promise to Sloane came before the packet was returned, Bennett had been planning my exit before the title office ever said no. And if it came after, then moving Sloane into my house was not confidence. It was panic. It was panic. I knew it before Mara said anything else. Bennett had not moved Sloane into my house because he felt safe. He had moved her in because something had gone wrong, and he needed me scared before I found it. Mara asked me to read the dates out loud. I placed everything in a row across the kitchen table. The deed. the title company envelopes, the courier receipt, the screenshot from Sloan, my handwritten timeline. My kitchen did not look like a kitchen anymore. It looked like the place where my marriage was being translated into proof. I started with the courier receipt. Title packet returned. I said, 3 months ago. Then I read the date from Sloan's screenshot. Bennett went still. That was the first sign. The screenshot was older than the returned packet by almost 2 weeks. I looked up slowly. You promised her 30% before the title company sent anything back. Bennett's mouth opened. That is not what that means. Mara heard him through the phone. Then what does it mean? He did not answer her. Sloan did. It means he told me the house was already moving forward, she said. Her voice sounded smaller now, but not innocent. He said Claire was being handled. Handled. There it was again. Mara told me to take another picture of the timeline with everything lined up in order. I did. My hands did not shake as much this time. Then she said, Renee just sent confirmation that a packet was submitted and returned. She cannot discuss everything over the phone yet, but the return note says missing owner consent. Missing owner consent. For a moment, I forgot how to breathe. Not missing file. Not wrong address. Not routine delay. Missing owner consent. My consent. Bennett had already promised Sloan a share before the title office rejected the packet because I had not agreed. Then after the rejection, he moved her into my bedroom and tried to put a temporary property understanding in front of me. The order mattered. The dates mattered. He had not made one bad choice. He had made a chain. I looked at Bennett, and for the first time all night, I did not see the man I had married. I saw the system he had built around me. Hide the mail. Control the paperwork. Promise Sloan. Submit the packet. Get rejected. Bring Sloan into the house. Pressure Claire to sign. One step after another. Sloan stared at him. You said she had already agreed. Bennett pointed at me like I had caused this. She was supposed to. She knew we needed money. I knew we needed honesty, I said. His face twisted. Do not act like some saint. You never understood what I was trying to build. With my name, I said, on my deed. Mara's voice came through the speaker, calm but firm. Claire, stop talking now. Keep the documents together. Tomorrow I want the originals in my office. Bennett laughed once. Originals? For what? For the record, Mara said. That word changed the room again. Record. Not argument. Not marriage fight. Not hurt feelings. Record. I slid the deed back into the blue folder. Then I slid the courier receipt, the title envelopes, the screenshot printout I had made from my phone, and my timeline behind it. The stack was no longer random. It had become a path. And that path led to one question Bennett could not talk his way around. If the packet was returned because my consent was missing, what exactly had he sent them about me in the first place? What exactly had he sent them about me? That question followed me through the rest of the night. Bennett did not answer it. After Mara told me to bring the originals to her office, he stopped arguing in full sentences. He paced. He whispered to Sloan. He checked his phone again and again, like he was waiting for someone to save him. No one did. I sat with the blue folder on my lap until sunrise. Every few minutes, I opened it again, as if the papers might change when I looked away. But they stayed the same. My deed, the title envelopes, the courier receipt, the screenshot, the timeline. Proof did not make the pain smaller. It only made the lie harder to deny. The next morning, I drove to Mara's office with the folder pressed against my ribs like a shield. I expected Bennett to follow me. He did not. That scared me more than if he had shouted from the driveway. Mara met me in the small conference room herself. She did not waste time. Renee pulled the returned file. She said, "She cannot treat this like casual conversation. But there is a copy of what was submitted, and I need you to prepare yourself before you see the language." My hands went cold. What language? Mara opened a thin packet on the table. The first page had the house address. My house. Below, it was Bennett's name. Then came a line that made everything in me go still. Current spouse, Claire Whitaker, departing spouse. I stared at it. Departing spouse. Not owner. Not wife. Not person whose consent was missing. Departing spouse. Mara let me sit with it for a moment. She did not rush me. She did not soften it. I think she knew the words had to hurt before I could understand them. He wrote me out. I whispered. He tried to frame you as already leaving, Mara said. I turned the page with shaking fingers. That was when I saw Sloane's name. Planned occupant manager. Sloane Mercer. For a few seconds, I could not hear anything. The room was quiet, but inside me, something was breaking loudly. Sloane had not just been sleeping in my bedroom. Bennett had not just promised her money in private texts. He had put her into the future of my house on paper, like she was part of a plan, and I was already a past tense. I looked at Mara. He submitted this. Yes, she said. And it was returned because there was no valid owner consent from you. I pressed my hand over my mouth. That was the part that nearly made me cry. Not because the title office had rejected it, but because Bennett had been brave enough, cruel enough, to send paperwork that treated my life as a detail already solved. Mara pointed to another section. There was a short note about proposed luxury rental use, another about management review, another about spouse transition. Every phrase sounded polite, clean, businesslike. That made it worse. Bennett's betrayal had not been messy on paper. It had been organized. I remembered him standing in my kitchen telling me marriage changed things. I remembered him putting the temporary agreement in front of me. I remembered Sloane saying I was not supposed to look. Now I knew why. If I had signed even one harmless-looking paper, he would have used my own hand to support the story he had already written without me. Mara closed the packet halfway. "We are not done," she said. "This needs to be reviewed with the certified deed, the rejection notice, and Renee's title records together." I looked down at the words again. Departing spouse. Planned occupant manager. For the first time, I understood the whole humiliation. Bennett had not moved Sloane into my bedroom because he had replaced me in his heart. He had moved her in because he had already tried to replace me on paper. He had already tried to replace me on paper. That truth followed me into the official review like a weight I could not put down. Mara did not let me sit alone with it for long. She placed the certified deed on the table first, then the title history, then the rejection notice, then the returned packet. Each paper had its own place. Each one answered a different lie. "The deed tells us who owns the house," she said. My name was there in black letters. "The title history tells us whether that changed." It had not. "The rejection notice tells us why the packet failed. Missing owner consent. And the returned packet tells us what Bennett tried to present. Departing spouse. Planned occupant manager." Mara slid the papers into a straight line across the conference table. It looked simple, almost too simple for the amount of pain it carried. Then Bennett walked in. I had not known Mara asked him to come for the documented review. When I saw him in the doorway, my body reacted before my mind did. My shoulders tightened. My hand moved toward the blue folder. Mara noticed. "You are not alone," she said quietly. Bennett looked different in that room. In my kitchen. He had filled the space with his voice. In Mara's office, with the records laid out, he looked smaller. Still, he tried. "This is being blown out of proportion," he said. "Claire is emotional. She misunderstood a business idea." Mara did not argue. She picked up the certified deed. "Is this Claire's name?" Bennett looked at it. "Yes, but is your name on this deed as owner?" His jaw tightened. "No." Mara placed it down and picked up the title history. Do these records show a valid transfer from Claire to you? Bennett's face darkened. No, because the process was not finished. That was the first crack. Mara turned to the rejection notice. The packet was returned because owner consent was missing. Claire did not sign. Correct. He looked at me, then, like he wanted me to look away. I did not. I thought we had an understanding, he said. Mara opened the returned packet. An understanding is not the same as consent. The room went quiet. Then Mara read the submitted language out loud. Claire Whitaker, departing spouse. The words sounded even worse in her voice. Clean, clear, official. Bennett shifted in his chair. That was just a description. Mara turned the page. Sloan Mercer, planned occupant manager. He looked down. Mara continued. So your position is that Claire misunderstood. Even though the deed is in her name, the title history shows no transfer. The rejection notice says owner consent was missing, and your own packet describes Claire as departing while placing Sloan in a planned role connected to the house. Bennett said nothing. For the first time, silence did not feel empty. It felt like proof. Mara's office phone lit up. She put Renee Ortiz on speaker only after confirming everyone knew the call was for records clarification. Renee's voice was calm and careful. The returned file reflects no completed transfer, Renee said. The notes show the packet could not move forward because valid owner consent was not provided. Bennett leaned forward. That does not mean I did anything wrong. Renee did not respond to that. Mara did. It means your claim that the house was basically yours was not supported by the records. His face flushed. I remembered him in my bedroom doorway, telling me not to make things ugly. I remembered Sloan wearing my robe like she had already won. I remembered the fear in his face when Mara first asked for the deed. Now I knew why. The deed proved the first lie. The title history proved nothing had changed. The rejection notice proved he had tried and failed. The packet proved he had written a future where I was already gone. Bennett looked at me then, but there was no power left in it. Claire, he said almost softly, you do not want to destroy everything over paperwork. I looked at the line where he had called me a departing spouse. No, I said, you destroyed it when you turned paperwork into a weapon. Mara gathered the records into a clean stack. Bennett had walked into that room, ready to explain me away. But the documents had spoken in order, and every page had taken one more excuse from him. Now, there was only one thing left to learn. What did a man lose when the lie he built his future on became official? What did a man lose when the lie he built his future on became official? Bennett found out faster than I expected. The first thing he lost was the story. For weeks, maybe months, he had told people the house was basically his. He had told Sloan I was leaving. He had told himself the deed was only old paperwork. But once Mara had the certified records lined up, his version stopped sounding like confidence and started sounding like fraud dressed in a wedding ring. Mara sent written notices where they needed to go. She kept the language careful and simple. The house was in my name. There was no completed transfer. I had not given consent to use it for a rental plan, business plan, occupancy plan, or anything connected to Bennett's packet. She did not need to insult him. The records did that. By the next afternoon, Bennett's investor meeting was gone. I knew because he called me 6 times in a row, then sent a message, so angry it looked like his thumbs were shaking. You ruined everything. I stared at those 3 words for a long time. Not I am sorry. Not I lied. Not I used you. You ruined everything. Mara told me not to answer. Then Sloan called. I almost ignored it, but Mara was sitting beside me and told me to let it go to voicemail first. Sloan's voice came through tight and bitter. He told me you were already out. He told me the paperwork was just waiting on signatures. I am not going down for his mess. There was no apology in it, only fear. But fear had changed sides. That evening, Sloane left the house. Not gracefully, not quietly. Bennett tried to stop her in the driveway, and I watched from the window while she threw 2 bags into her car. One of them was mine. Mara had already told me not to confront her directly, so I stood still and recorded the time in my notes. Sloane pointed at Bennett's chest and said something I could not hear. Then she got in her car and drove away. The woman who had walked into my bedroom like she belonged there left like someone escaping a bad deal. Bennett came back inside alone. That was the second thing he lost. The prize he had used to humiliate me no longer trusted him. The third thing he lost was leverage. When he tried to tell Mara he had marital rights, she answered with records. When he said the house had been part of his business plan, she answered with no consent. When he said Sloane had misunderstood, Mara answered with his own submitted packet. Every road he tried to take led back to the same wall. My name, my deed, his failed packet. By the end of the week, the title office file had been preserved, the false ownership claim had been challenged, and Bennett's rental plan had collapsed before it ever touched my front door. He could no longer wave his hands and call it a misunderstanding. Too many people had seen the paper trail. Then he tried one final thing. He asked if we could settle privately. I knew what he meant. He wanted silence. He wanted me to protect his name after he had tried to erase mine. For the first time, I did not answer as his wife. I answered as the woman whose signature he never got. No, I said. Everything goes through Mara now. His face changed when he heard that, because karma was not lightning. It was not screaming. It was not me begging the world to believe me. It was Bennett standing in the ruins of a plan built on my house, my trust, and my name, with nothing left to hide behind. He had moved Sloane in to prove I was replaceable. Instead, the records proved he was removable. And once that became clear, the next question was no longer what Bennett had lost. It was what I would choose to keep. The next question was what I would choose to keep. At first, I thought the answer was the house. I wanted to keep the walls, the keys, the deed, the right to stand in my own doorway without being treated like a stranger. And through Mara, I followed the proper steps to protect all of that. Bennett's access was handled through the legal process. Sloane's things were removed the right way. The locks were changed only after Mara told me it was safe and proper. But when the house finally went quiet, I learned the truth. Keeping the house was not the same as getting myself back. The first morning after everything settled, I walked into the master bedroom and stopped in the doorway. The bed was bare. The robe was gone. The slippers were back in the closet, though I threw them away before lunch. I turned the wedding photo face up for one last second, not because I wanted it back, but because I wanted to look at the old version of my life without flinching. Then I put it in a box, not in anger, in peace. I opened the curtains and let sunlight hit the floor where Sloane had once stood like she belonged there. I cleaned the dresser myself. I changed the sheets. I placed a small bowl of lavender on the nightstand, right where that photo had been turned down. For the first time in days, the room smelled like my home again. The blue folder stayed on the kitchen table for another week. I kept touching it every time I passed, like I had to remind myself the truth was still there. Then one evening, I slid the deed back inside, closed the folder, and placed it in a new fireproof box. That felt like a different kind of victory. Not holding proof because I was scared. Storing proof because I was safe. Bennett still tried to reach me. A few messages came through Mara. A few apologies came too late to mean anything. I did not read them more than once. I had already learned that some people only sound sorry after the paper trail stops them. So I chose quiet, not weakness, not silence forced on me. Quiet justice. And maybe that is the hardest choice after betrayal. When the truth is finally documented, should you expose every detail so everyone sees what they did, or should you protect your peace and let the record speak for itself? I still believe justice matters, but I also learned that healing matters too. If you have stayed with me this far, please subscribe when you are ready and tell me what you would have chosen. I kept the house, but more than that, I kept my name. I kept the mornings where no one shouted from the hallway. I kept the kitchen table where Proof once sat and turned it back into a place for coffee, mail, and fresh flowers. I kept the bedroom that had almost become a symbol of my humiliation and made it quiet again. The house was never just walls. It was the place where I finally stopped asking for permission to belong.